Sophia Miller, a well-respected lawyer in the heart of Denver, sat on a park bench, enjoying the warmth of the spring sun. A black woman in her early 30s, she'd been working nonstop for weeks, balancing her busy career and personal life. The park was her escape, a place where she could read and unwind. With a thick novel in hand, she immersed herself in the pages, unaware of the gathering clouds above. Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires cut through her peaceful moment. A police car screeched to a halt in front of the park. Two officers stepped out, their eyes immediately falling on Sophia. "Ma'am, may we have a word?" one officer called, his voice sharp with suspicion. His partner stood silently, eyes scanning the area. Sophia raised an eyebrow, glancing up from her book with a calm expression. "Of course." The officer continued, "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area. What are you doing here?" Sophia, still puzzled, closed her book gently. "Suspicious activity? I'm just reading a book in the park." One of the officers narrowed his eyes, clearly not convinced. "Can we see some ID?" he demanded. Sophia felt her pulse quicken, but she remained composed. "I don't understand. What's this about?" "It's routine," the second officer said dismissively, but the suspicion in his voice didn't match his words. Sophia sighed, reached into her bag, and handed over her driver's license. The officer studied it with unnerving intensity. "Sophia Miller, what are you doing here, Miss Miller?" he asked, almost mocking her name. "I live here," she replied, maintaining her calm. "I came to the park to enjoy the day. Is that a problem?" The officer's lips tightened. "We'll see." But instead of leaving, the officers stayed, their questions growing more intrusive. "Do you always carry a book like that around?" one sneered. "Are you alone or waiting for someone?" his partner added, his hand casually resting on his belt. Sophia's patience began to wear thin. "I'm not answering any more questions unless you tell me what I'm being accused of," she said firmly. The officer's demeanor shifted. "Don't get smart with us," one snapped. "We're just doing our job." "I know the law," Sophia shot back. "I'm not breaking it by sitting in a public park." But reason didn't seem to matter. The officer grabbed her arm. "You're resisting," he declared, even though Sophia hadn't moved. "What are you doing?" Sophia exclaimed as they forcefully pulled her toward their cruiser. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, and a bystander began recording the scene on their phone. The officer repeated, "Stop resisting," as if to justify their actions to the growing audience. Sophia's heart raced as she was handcuffed, feeling a wave of humiliation and anger. She knew all too well how these situations escalated. The officers led her to their cruiser, ignoring the crowd's questions. As the door slammed shut, she locked eyes with the young woman recording. Their silent exchange spoke volumes, a plea for the injustice to be documented. The ride to the police station was quiet. Sophia sat in the back seat, the cold metal of the handcuffs digging into her wrists. She'd spent years defending clients, standing up for justice, and now she was the one in the back of a cruiser, the victim of a baseless arrest. At the station, the booking process was dehumanizing. They took her fingerprints, photographed her, and placed her in a small holding cell. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. "Enjoy your stay," one officer said with a smug grin as he slammed the cell door shut. Sophia's mind raced. She replayed the events in the park, the unprovoked suspicion, the baseless accusations. How had a peaceful moment turned into this? The answer, she realized, was painfully clear racial bias. Hours later, a young officer appeared with a clipboard. "Miss Miller," he said, his voice flat. "You've been charged with resisting arrest and obstructing a peace officer." Sophia's patience was thin. "On what grounds?" "You can discuss that in court," he replied, turning on his heel before she could ask more questions. Sophia exhaled slowly. She knew the charges were flimsy, but the system wasn't going to make this easy for her. She'd have to fight for her freedom and for the justice that was too often denied to people who looked like her. Eventually, Sophia was released on bail. The cool night air hit her like a wave as she stepped outside the station. Her colleague and close friend, Marissa, was waiting by the curb. "Are you okay?" Marissa asked, concern written all over her face. Sophia nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. I'm fine. As they drove away, Marissa glanced at her. What's next? Sophia's voice was steady, but fierce. I'm not letting this slide. Not this time. Marissa squeezed the steering wheel. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm tired of this happening, Sophia replied. I have the knowledge, the resources, and the power to fight back. And I will. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and sleepless nights. Sophia worked tirelessly, assembling a civil rights lawsuit against the officers and the department. Her legal team, though initially hesitant due to the attention her case was drawing, rallied around her. They knew this fight wasn't just about Sophia, it was about setting a precedent. The video of her arrest went viral, spreading her story far beyond Denver. Messages of support poured in from across the country, people sharing their own experiences of racial profiling and injustice. Sophia's resolve grew stronger with each message. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had been silenced, humiliated, and oppressed. Despite the media frenzy, Sophia turned down every interview. She wasn't interested in the spotlight. She had a goal: to hold these officers accountable and expose the flaws in the system. But it wasn't just about the courtroom. Sophia also made sure to connect with the community, listening to others who had faced similar injustices. She spoke at town halls, worked with local activists, and even addressed a group of students at a nearby college. One evening, as she walked to her car after a long day of meetings, a stranger approached. "Miss Miller," the woman said softly, "I just wanted to thank you." Her voice cracked. "For standing up to them. For standing up for all of us." Sophia's throat tightened as she smiled. "I'm just doing what I can." Days later, Sophia received a call from her attorney. The officers she was suing had filed a motion to dismiss the case, a standard tactic to delay proceedings. But as her attorney explained the next steps, Sophia froze. "You should know something," her attorney said cautiously. "You've been assigned as the judge for one of their cases next month." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The irony was staggering. She had spent weeks preparing to fight these officers in court, and now, fate had placed her on the other side of the bench. Could she do it? Could she sit in judgment of these officers, knowing what they had done to her? For a moment, the weight of the situation felt overwhelming. But then, Sophia thought about everything they had put her through, and everything she had fought for. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was an opportunity to show the world what real justice looked like.